All right, if you've got an exam on English literature coming up, then you are in exactly the right place. Seriously, think of this as your dynamic study guide. We're going to break down the entire timeline, connect all the dots between authors, ideas, and those big historical moments, all so you can absolutely ace that test. Ready? Let's dive in. So, here's our roadmap for this little time-traveling tour. We're going to start way back in the medieval world, then watch the incredible rebirth of the Renaissance, challenge, well, everything with the Age of Reason, dive headfirst into the emotion and industry of the 19th century, and finally, navigate the brave new world of modernism. And then we'll wrap it all up with a super quick review to make sure it all sticks. And this is our guide for the whole journey. We're going to take this entire timeline and break it down piece by piece. So by the end, you'll see exactly how the ideas from one era totally set the stage for whatever came next. Okay, our journey begins in the medieval world. This is where the very foundations of English literature were laid. We're talking everything from epic heroes battling terrifying monsters to knights going on these deeply spiritual quests.
First stop, the Old English period. You gotta imagine a time of ancient kingdoms, where amazing stories and histories weren't passed down in books. Nope, they were passed down through the spoken word, from person to person.
So, for your exam, this is absolutely crucial. You need to connect Old English with two key things: oral tradition and heroic poetry. These poems were performed, they were chanted, they were memorized, long before anyone ever wrote them down.
And the undisputed champion of this entire era is Beowulf. Honestly, if you see a question about Old English on your test, I'd bet money it's about this epic poem of a hero fighting the monster Grendel. It really is the cornerstone of the whole period.
And then, bam! Everything changes. The Norman Conquest in 1066 completely transforms the language itself, and that ushers in the Middle English period. Suddenly, the world is defined by all these new social structures. So literature gets filled with tales of chivalry, deep religious allegories, and these super complex rules of courtly love. It's a world really grappling with faith and mortality, especially with the dark shadow of the plague hanging over everything. The key figure here, the one you've got to know, is Geoffrey Chaucer. His Canterbury Tales is just a masterpiece. It gives you this brilliant and honestly often hilarious snapshot of every single level of medieval society, all through a group of pilgrims telling stories. It is an absolute must-know. Okay, hold on, because now we're going to leap forward into an era of just incredible change. It's a phase defined first by this rebirth of human creativity, and then, right after, by this powerful belief in logic and pure reason. And wow, what a rebirth it was. The Renaissance finally arrives in England, and it brings with it this explosion of art and science and exploration. The whole focus shifts, you know? It moves from the divine, from God, to the human. The key word to remember here is humanism. This new focus on human potential and what we can achieve. And this new spirit, it found its absolute perfect expression in the flourishing of poetry, especially the sonnet, and most importantly, in drama. And look, when you think Renaissance drama, you really think of one man, William Shakespeare. For any exam, just remember, Shakespeare is the Renaissance. His plays, like Hamlet, explored the depths of human nature like nobody ever had before. Of course, you also have giants like Marlowe, Donne, and John Milton, whose epic, Paradise Lost, comes right at the tail end of this period. So, after all that explosive, messy, creative energy of the Renaissance, the pendulum swings way back. We enter the Enlightenment, which you might also see called the Neoclassical period, or the Age of Reason. The new ideals are all about order, logic, and clarity. This whole period reflects this deep desire for stability after years and years of turmoil. Writers valued reason above everything else, and they used satire as their weapon of choice to critique society and its rigid class structures. Here's an exam tip. If a question mentions Alexander Pope or Jonathan Swift, the answer is almost definitely satire. And this slide right here, this just brilliantly illustrates the tension that was brewing. The Enlightenment's intense focus on logic, society, and reason was about to spark a powerful rebellion. This slide is basically your key to understanding what's coming next, a complete rejection of all these values in favor of pure emotion, the individual, and the power of nature.
So now we're entering the 19th century, which was a period of massive, massive upheaval. The world is being completely reshaped by revolution, by industry, and by empire, and its literature reflects every single one of those turbulent moments.
Kicking things off are the Romantics. They were just fed up with the cold logic of the last era, so they championed intense emotion, they celebrated the individual's imagination, and they found spiritual truth not in high society, but in the raw, untamed power of nature. Think poets like Wordsworth, Shelley, and Keats. And then comes the long, long reign of Queen Victoria. This is the age of the novel. I mean, the novel was everything. Writers like Charles Dickens and the Bronte sisters used these huge, sprawling stories to grapple with the new realities of industrialization, campaigning for social reform and exploring really complex moral questions in a world that was dominated by the British Empire. And as we enter the 20th century, well, the old world is shattered. 2 world wars just destroyed all the old certainties. And writers responded by literally breaking the rules of storytelling itself to try and capture a new, fragmented reality.
So the modern period is really defined by this profound sense of disillusionment, especially after the trauma of World War I. Writers basically felt that traditional stories just couldn't explain the world anymore, so they started experimenting with these fragmented forms to reflect the kind of fractured modern consciousness.
And a key technique they used was something called stream of consciousness. Now, this is a critical concept for your exam. Instead of a neat, orderly plot, authors like Virginia Woolf and James Joyce tried to capture the messy, chaotic, and continuous flow of a character's mind directly on the page. Okay, so after World War II, we enter the postmodern period. And it's like this. If modernism was anxious about everything being fragmented, postmodernism decided to have fun with it, to play with it. It's super self-aware, using techniques like metafiction, where a story actually admits it is a story, to question the whole idea of a single truth and embrace a much more global perspective. Phew, we have covered a vast amount of ground. So, before we finish up, let's just do a really rapid-fire review to help you lock this entire timeline into your memory for exam day. Here it is, the whole journey on one slide. Old English epics, they start around 450. The Normans arrive in 1066, kicking off Middle English. The Renaissance dawns around 1500, followed by the Enlightenment in 1660. The Romantics react in 1798, leading to the Victorians in 1837. And finally, the 20th century begins in 1901, ushering in the modern and postmodern eras. Got it?
So, as a final thought, just take a look back at this incredible timeline, from heroic poetry all the way to playful metafiction. Each period tells a story about its time. So the question I'll leave you with is this. Which of these periods, with all its unique anxieties and innovations, do you think speaks most directly to the world that we are living in right now? Something to think about.